Visit forkpitch.com for curated content in a culinary marketplace.
Hi, I'm Chef Joey for Fork Pitch, and today I'm going to be making the best meatball subs. Meatballs, and as what we're going to turn them into, meatball subs, are one of those things that I really have a passion for. One of the first restaurants I ever worked in was an Italian restaurant that's very well known and has a very good reputation. But the one thing I always thought is their food was great, and I always thought their meatballs were so disappointing. And then I went to another Italian restaurant, fine dining again, and I thought the exact same thing, where it's just like this product, this perfect like meatball, this perfect food is something that is just often done so wrong, and it makes me sad. And so where I live now, I've ordered meatballs from around every place that does delivery to me, or tried takeout from every place. I have like two I like out of probably hundreds. And so when it comes down to it, I really just have to make my own because I'm picky, and the food I want is never going to be exactly how it's made, how I feel like it should be made. So for this meatball, I'm going to be doing a 3-meat blend. We have sourdough bread over here, which is just a really nice bakery sourdough I picked up fresh this morning. I like sourdough for a meatball sub. It has a little more of that tang, and it has a little more flavor than other breads, so it stands up really well to something that has so much umami and so much flavor, so you don't just lose the bread. And then we're going to be melting buffalo mozzarella on top of it to just get that really lovely oozy cheese flavor with the meatball sub. I also have tomato sauce that I'm cooking over here, and that's also going to go on top of the meatball sub, and it's really, really good. It has the acidic components that are going to balance this really umami heavy dish. So for the meatballs, I have a 3-meat blend here. I have ground beef, I have ground veal, and then I have a little bit of ground pork. And then the last thing I'm going to do is use a little trick I picked up. So oftentimes when you go to a good supermarket, or you go to a supermarket in general, sometimes they're out of something for the day. Usually I find supermarkets run out of ground pork very early on. So it can be very hard to find that, or it can be very hard to find ground veal. So I've learned that if you kind of buy their sausages, one, you get a meat that is already pre-seasoned and pre-flavored, and could be tweaked a little bit, because everything can in my opinion. But two, you also get that ground component. So over here I have this hot Italian sausage, pork sausage, and so what I'm just going to do is literally open up the case down the back, and pull out the meat and just take the casing off. It's going to come out in like a little chunk. And that way you already have this pre-ground meat that's perfect texture and is going to just integrate really nicely into the meatballs. So this one is also pork. The lighter pinkish meat is the veal, and the darker reddish meat is the beef. I like to use very little beef in my meatballs. I like to use probably about 60% pork, 35%, wait, I did my math wrong. 50% pork, 35% veal, and then 15% beef. And the reason I like to stay away from beef in the meatballs is, one, it is less fatty than the other two, so it doesn't make for as nice a ground meat product. But two, I mostly just want to use it to kind of bring the two flavors together and give it that base note. The flavors are going to be coming mostly from the ground pork, and then the veal is going to add to this lightness and really make it so you can eat 40 of these instead of just 4 of them. So for spicing for my best ever meatballs, I have a couple different things going on. I have salt, of course, we have eggs and breadcrumbs. Those two are going to act as the binders. And then over here I have a mixture of ground black pepper, oregano, and fennel seeds. Those are going to be the main flavors that are going to be added to the meat. So you have to use a generous amount of each, because the meat has very strong flavors and it needs that to hold up to it. And so another thing I've learned over the time of making this, I think there's a little crushed red pepper in there too, is I used to hand chop all my onions and do all my fresh onions and all these fresh herbs and these fresh garlic. And I kind of learned over time that the dried stuff, it really stands up and lets itself express its flavor better. So getting high quality dried ingredients instead of using just fresh actually works better in a meatball, which is almost sacrilege to say as a chef. So this is half onion powder, half dried onion, and then half garlic powder. So those are going to go in 2. And then 2 eggs. And then the breadcrumb, of course, as a binder. And then the salt. And one of the number one secrets in restaurants is that, you know, we use a lot of salt, and most people don't use an appropriate amount of salt. So you're going to see me use a really good amount here. And you need that in dishes to have that flavor come through, and it wakes up your tongue and makes things taste better. And if you're keen-eyed, you'll notice that I haven't actually added this last part in yet. So this is what makes my meatballs unique. So I spent a lot of time in Italian kitchens, and one of the ingredients that I picked up with and I really love, and I use it all the time, are Calabrian chilies. They are from the Calabria region, which is in the south of Italy, and they are spicy unlike most other Italian ingredients. So they have a really nice heat to them, and what they do in this dish is they kind of cut that really heavy flavor, and it makes that for that lightness so you can eat more, and also so you don't get tired of the flavor. So they act in a very similar way to the veal, where it's, you know, lighter and it's nice and it's very lovely to eat. So I'm gonna add those in too. And then I'm just gonna mix all these together by hand, and probably actually add in a dash of olive oil, which I left over here. So I'm just gonna add a squirt of that in, just for some moisture. And some people like to use white bread in their meatballs. I see that, that's cool. And some people like to use milk, and I'm not a huge fan of adding milk. I think you have more than enough fat and more than enough liquid by just using the olive oil and then the eggs. And so I'm gonna mix all these by hand until everything is incorporated into a nice homogeneous mixture. The meat mixture has been all put together, and then of course cleaning up is a major part of being a chef. And so this is a dish I went through a lot of testing, a lot of recipe development, a lot of trying different things, a lot of, you know, kind of experimenting, going with what works and what doesn't. And it's kind of funny because with most recipes, eventually you trend towards the pattern of, well, if you put more work in, more fresh ingredients, more time, more cooking methods, you get a better product. Meatballs are the only product I've ever had that really has been the opposite at all times. So when it comes to meatballs, I don't sear them on all sides like some people do in their cast iron. I've tried that before, and I find that the product you get is not as good as just a really good, consistent high bake. So I'm gonna put these in at 450 for about 10 minutes, then I'm gonna drop them down to 350 for about 15 to 20 minutes or until they're done. And I'm just gonna bake them right in a sheet. And it's a lot easier, so it's really nice to have a product which it's not only easier to bake as a cooking method, but also it's better. That's like the dream there. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of olive oil to this pan so that it doesn't stick. And then my other big thing for meatballs is when you're baking something, you wanna make sure that you have a consistent size. So for them, I'm gonna make sure that they are all similar in size by using an ice cream scoop. So the ice cream scoop is another way. It's like, it's easier, it's faster. It's not something people normally think of, but it's a trick I picked up in a bunch of kitchens. So you literally just put it and then you can scoop it directly on the pan. And so what this does is I'm gonna round these all with my hands when I'm done, but for now I just get this really consistent portion size, and I can actually move a lot faster than trying to roll everything by hand. If I was gonna do a stuffed meatball, which I do occasionally, I would just smash these straight on the cutting board, and then I would put the stuff in the middle and then just roll it back up in a center. Into a sphere, not into a center. So I've hand rolled all of these after I scooped them, and you can see they're all pretty consistent in size. Some are a little bigger than others, and that's just human error. And so these are about to go in the oven at 450. And the reason I have them so high is because I really want to make sure that that heat transfer happens on the sheet tray and the meatballs, which are very cold. And so they do get that nice brown crust on the bottom. I'm going to put them on a high rack too to make sure that they cook and they get some of that heat from the oven. So I might broil them at the end, also put color on the top. But I'm not overly concerned about keeping them all, you know, in neat, perfect little rows. Just try to keep them all with a little bit of space so they're not touching, because then you also want the fat to leach out and make sure that cooking is going to happen on the bottom. So these are going to go in for about 10 to 15 minutes. I'm going to take a look at them around there at 450, and then I'm going to drop the heat down to 375, 350 for about 20 minutes afterwards. Alright, so for this best ever meatball subs, I am going to make some tomato sauce. Tomato sauce is, you know, a huge component of it. It is a binder. It really is lovely. It's a very important and often neglected part of a meatball sub. So I can do fresh tomatoes when I have access to them, and I will do the whole making a huge pot of sauce and blistering them and boiling them down. But the honest answer is a lot of the time for tomato sauce, especially even in the high-end kitchens I use, we use more of the canned tomatoes because you can get access to really, really nice San Marzano tomatoes, and you can get access to like tomatoes that would normally be out of season or stuff that you wouldn't normally be able to get in the region. So that's kind of the reason we like to use canned. And they can often have a really good flavor provided you pay for nice high quality tomatoes. So I use two cans of really nice high quality tomatoes, and I'm just adding in some onions, garlic here, aromatics, and then I used olive oil in the pot with just a pat of butter for a little bit of fattiness. And then for the final part, I'm gonna add some fresh dried from my garden parsley and rosemary. And one of the big things that people make the mistake with tomato sauce is they throw in the herbs so early that you don't actually get any of the flavor of them. When I finish this tomato sauce, I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of lemon zest, a little bit of lemon juice, all the fresh herbs. I'm gonna stir that all in, and that's right before I serve it. And that way you don't lose the flavor, it's really fresh, and it comes to your table. All right, and then we just put these in here and then let that simmer for about 40 minutes. And I'm going to lay in some salt and some black pepper just to add flavor, because you always need that. And I'm not going to do the full can here, about half. So turn that down to low, turn that down to simmer. Fresh ground black pepper. And then just a pinch of salt. And then I'm gonna mix that all together just by stirring the pot and let that simmer on low until we're ready to add it in to our meatball sub. With the bread being pulled out of the oven, the meatballs are out of the oven as well. These cook nice and quick. I finished the tomato sauce off with some fresh herbs, some lemon, just like I had talked about. And now the bread is perfectly toasted. I got that really nice crispy one side and the cheese perfectly melted. There's one trick I like to do with meatballs and tomato sauce is like, when I have this extra grease, I like to just dibble a little bit into my tomato sauce. And so that brings like kind of harmony between the flavors. And it also adds this like nice little umami note to the tomato sauce. And so it's gonna incorporate nicely. And that gives a little more fat and flavor to it. So for this meatball sub, I'm gonna take this, and I like this one. Got that really nice like cheese pull going on there. I'm gonna put him here, and then I'm going to take a meatball, select my favorite, and I like this one. I think he has really nice color. And then just take a little scoop of sauce here with all the fresh herbs, and now that meat juice added in, a little bit of grease, and then put that all on top here. And then one of my personal preferences is this, you don't have to do this. This is amazing on its own. I like just a touch of red wine vinegar. I think it adds a really cool note to it. And these are gonna be messy. I'm not gonna pretend like this is a neat food, but I'm really excited to dig into this. Okay, and here we go. It is piping hot. It is so hot from just coming out of the oven and everything, but I'm going to brave this sandwich anyway. It's so good. The cheese is perfect. It adds so much flavor to the meatball. Tomato sauce is lovely and acidic, and it takes off those notes that would be too strong otherwise, and the bread is perfectly crisp with that toasting texture. So hot. And of course the star of the dish. These are salty, they're juicy. They have a nice little bit of kick of heat from the Calabrian chilies. They have an awesome amount of salt integrated into them, and then the herbs are so lovely and they shine through so well. That fennel flavor, that oregano flavor. Oh, it's the perfect meatball for me. I'm Chef Toby for Fork Pitch, and very happily I like to wrap this video on meatball subs.
This video is a Fork Pitch production in conjunction with Midwest Digital AV Incorporated. Midwest Digital AV Incorporated provides audio, video, streaming, and production services throughout the Midwest. Please visit them at midwestdigitalcorp.com.